So a few weeks ago, I have attended the mcbranschen.se event where you could test different motorcycles on a short track. We were testing at this Gillinge Halkbana track, and the route was something like this. So you enter here, then you have a short stride, then you have a turn, another sharp turn, and then long stride, a couple of turns here, then a little bit twist over here, and then you are getting this way back, sharp turn, and a few strides with this turn. In total, each motorcycle I was able to test for about 15 minutes, and it depends on the traffic and how early you can get the motorcycle. You can make here 3 to 5 laps, maybe sometimes 6, but usually I was somewhere around 4 to 5 laps. While testing the motorcycles, I have made myself a list where I was writing down scores for each tested motorcycle, and the base score is of my MV Agusta Stradale 800 from 2015, which I ride for the second year right now, and I put it that my comfort, brakes, acceleration, feelings and fun of the motorcycle on the level of 5, and the rest values will be going up and down from here, depends on how I feel if the motorcycle is better or worse. Important to mention that this test track does not have a very long stride, so I could not test the top speed obviously, and did not have a chance to ride on the high speed for long, so the aerodynamics and the wind protection could not be tested properly, but still I have got some impression. The fastest I was able to get on this stride and on this stride was somewhere around 130-150 kilometers per hour, depends on the bike and depends on the traffic on the track. The first bike I have tested was Kawasaki Z900RS, the 2022 model. The bike looks a little bit retro, which I like, or it's actually like modern retro style. And the specs are decent. It has 110 horsepower, but the weight is 215 kilos. Comparing to my Stradale, which has 5 extra horsepower. So my Stradale has 115 horsepower, but only 181 kilograms in weight. This seems to be not as good, but overall I felt that the bike was pretty decent. The comfort, I would say not as comfortable as my Stradale, because I kind of prefer to sit a bit higher on the motorcycle. The brakes were also slightly worse. Acceleration was really nice, especially from the low RPMs, and especially since it is inline 4, you're getting the kick in when you start to rev up the engine, so it felt a little bit better than my Stradale. Overall feelings are not bad, not worse, and I would say, yeah, it's a nice bike, and maybe at some circumstances I could imagine having it, but overall, I would say that it's a bike without a character. Like, I don't have any particular feelings to tell about this Kawasaki. It's a very well-made bike, I don't have anything to complain, and if you enjoy the looks of this bike and the smoothness of inline 4, then sure, it's a very good bike. Maybe some years later I will buy one of these, but right now it's not for me. The next bike I have tested is Honda CMX 1100 Rebel DCT. Okay, this is supposed to be some sort of a modern cruiser, which is supposed to combine the modern tech with a comfortable riding position and all that sort of things, blah blah blah. It has 1100cc engine, I think it is parallel twin, which is making only 85 horsepower, and the weight of the bike is 223 kilograms. As you can see, it's not really standing in line with my Agusta, which has 115 horsepower and 181 kilograms, but still, because the bike was so low, and it is also thanks to its chassis, it was surprisingly maneuverable and it was easy to make turns. The engine is also kind of fun, but overall the bike is definitely not for me. I felt really uncomfortable riding the bike, I was really unimpressed with the brakes, acceleration with just 80 something horsepower and 220 plus kilograms is also not that great, and yeah, I didn't feel right and I didn't feel that it's a fun bike. The next one I have tested just to fill up the gap because all the other bikes were booked, so I could not take. So I took this Cfmoto 700 CLX Heritage. I have tested predecessor of this bike, which is I think it was called Cfmoto 650 NK. It was China only, I think, bike, and it was basically cheap copy of Kawasaki ER6. This one is supposed to be like upgraded copy of Kawasaki R6. The engine is slightly tuned, so it's a bit better and a bit bigger. Instead of 650cc, we're getting almost 700cc. It also has slightly more horsepower than the Kawasaki R6 has. So overall, this might be a good starter bike, especially considering that it's rather cheap and it also has a nice look. The bike is just exactly like Kawasaki R6N or Z650. The Eco mode is totally deaf, like the motorcycle does not accelerate, the dynamics are also rather bad, but in sport mode it's kind of okay, just like Kawasaki, maybe a bit better. And I was able to spot some quality issues, so I'm not sure that I would personally go with this particular model of Cfmoto. The next one I have tested was Harley-Davidson Street Bob 114. I have tested it because lately I enjoy long motorcycle trips more and more, and I was thinking that maybe I would like to sit on this motorcycle or this classical chopper or classical cruiser and just cruise around. It didn't happen to be so, but nevertheless. The motorcycle itself felt extremely high quality. I really loved the gearbox. But that doesn't mean that I like the bike overall. The comfort, I was not sitting comfortably on this Harley Davidson, even though they are supposed to be like long range comfortable motorcycles. No, I was not comfortable on the bike. The brakes are also not great, of course, since it is a cruiser motorcycle, which is not supposed to be like super fast. Acceleration, as you can expect, it has lots of torque, so it's not horrible, but also nothing to compare with the inline 3 or inline 4 engines, which are tuned for power. Overall feelings, yeah, the bike has a character, the bike is very well made, it feels premium, and I would like to have it as a second bike, but not as the only bike. Unfortunately, I cannot afford that. And the fun factor is not as good as my Stradale because it is very narrow use case. Just maybe some Sunday evening you chop out and to drink some coffee and be back. The next tested bike is Cfmoto 800 MT Touring. So the bike looks like this, and this one, unlike the previous Cfmoto, this one has engine from KTM and it has 800cc instead of 700cc. So the bike felt way much better. The engine has much more power, much more torque, or at least felt like that. The position on this motorcycle is very comfortable. You sit and you can relax. And much to my surprise, the motorcycle was also rather agile and maneuverable, even though it is rather heavy. So let me see how much it weighs. So it's 231 kilograms, but we need to keep in mind that it has this engine protection bay, and then it's also having this exhaust pipe protection frame, and also the windshield, this handlebar protection. So lots of extra stuff, but still not a light motorcycle. If I would look for a touring bike on a budget and I would want to buy a new bike, then this would definitely be on my list. But because I just got spoiled with my 115 horsepower on my Stradale, I don't think this would make for me. If it would have just slightly bit more power, for example about 100 horsepower or even like 95 horsepower, this would make it a much better motorcycle. Right now though, it's not bad, I enjoyed it, but I'm not switching my Stradale for this touring bike. The next one is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Low, and first I wanted to test the Tiger 900 GT, not the low version, but unfortunately all the non-low bikes were pre-booked before I could book one, so I had to go with the low version. And even though I'm rather short, about 175 centimeters, this low version was slightly too low for me. Thus, if I would be buying a Tiger, I would go for the standard version. Still, it's nice to see that they are making this low version, because I know some female riders who are even shorter than me will really appreciate it. The bike is available in different colors, of course, and this was one of the few bikes that I really felt it's a very nice motorcycle and nothing really to complain about. The only thing that I could pick up to complain about it is slightly too little horsepower. So we have only about 94 horsepower, which is about about 20 horsepower less than what we have with my Stradale. So Stradale has 115, this one has 95. And it is also slightly more heavier, so 193 against 181, but we're getting bigger fuel tank. It is a newer motorcycle. It also felt way much more smooth on the low ends, and overall I really felt comfortable and satisfied riding this Triumph Tiger. If it would not be as expensive as it is, I could consider swapping my Stradale to Triumph Tiger, but as of right now, there is basically no reason to swap one motorcycle to another one, even though Tiger scores slightly better in some places. For example, I felt more comfortable on the Tiger than on my Stradale, and I felt very lovely on the motorcycle, but overall fun factor is about the same. The next tested bike is Suzuki V-Strom 1050, and unfortunately I didn't like the bike at all. It felt like a big fat cow, which is hard to turn, hard to maneuver, does not have power and does not have torque at low ends. So I don't know, these bikes are probably for people who need to go for very long ranges. They don't care about agility, they just want to have a robust, reliable bike with big engine so it can pull lots of power, lots of weight. Then you load yourself, maybe load a passenger, load lots of bags, and just slowly move from A place to B place and have your long trips. Definitely not for me, and I honestly expected much more from a 1037cc V-twin engine, but it is what it is. The second last bike I have tested was Ducati Multistrada V2 S, and of course I wanted to test V4, but the bike was booked and I didn't have a chance to get it, so I took the V2 S. The overall feelings are very nice. The bike has 113 horsepower, which is just a little bit less than my Stradale. And the weight, let me see the weight is. The weight, unfortunately, is way much more, 224 kilograms against 181 kilograms of Stradale. But this is more of a touring bike. It has 20 liters in the fuel tank, and it also has slightly better wind protection and slightly better riding position, so this is like more appropriate for long trips and probably a better overall touring motorcycle, but not as good as a city riding and agility motorcycle as my Stradale. Nevertheless, even though I really liked the bike, I was not very happy with the feelings at low ends, especially when you need to maneuver inside the city. For example, the low ends are not very smooth and you feel like you need to rev the engine even though it's a V-twin to get that torque and power. So very comfortable. The brakes are worse than on my Stradale, acceleration is also worse, feelings are slightly worse, and fan factor is obviously not as good as Stradale because the bike is much heavier and not as agile. The last tested bike I have got is MV Agusta Turismo-Veloce. This bike I just loved. It's just awesome. And I felt like it's just my Stradale 800, which was upgraded in all aspects. It has slightly less horsepower, 110 HP compared to my 115, and it's also slightly heavier, 191 instead of 181, but it is also way much more appropriate for long trips. Like, it is a proper touring bike, so we have this wind protection and you can also install lots of extra equipment here. We are also getting very comfortable seat of both for the main rider and for the passenger. I don't know, I just love this bike. The acceleration was awesome, the brakes, the suspension, I just loved everything. The quick shifter as well. And the only thing I didn't really like is this semi-automatic gearbox, where the bike does not automatically engage. Even if you release the clutch, it will wait a little bit for your throttle and only then it starts to engage. Probably you can get used to it, but I felt annoyed with it because when you're trying to make engine brake and you just release the throttle, the bike stops and it doesn't choke, it just stops. Like, it's a bit of an unusual feeling, but I guess you can get used to it. If I would be able to afford MV Agusta Turismo-Veloce, I would definitely replace my Stradale with Turismo-Veloce, but as of right now, this Turismo-Veloce new one would cost about 20 to 25,000 euros, and I simply cannot afford it because of many other expenses I have to take care about.